Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. Got a great Figured Out Baseball podcast for you today. We're being joined by Coach Dahm, who is the head coach at Mount Mercy University, an NAIA school in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He's a guy with a really great background, a very interesting background, and I'll give you that background now before we jump into questions with him. He played collegiately at Creighton University in Omaha. He was there, graduated in 1989. From 1990 until 1993, he was an assistant coach at Creighton, which is obviously a Division I school. And in 1991, while he was there, the team actually qualified for the College World Series, which is in Omaha. The hometown team got to Omaha. Very, very cool situation there. They finished third nationally, and we're definitely going to have to talk about that throughout this podcast. Then in 1993, he was hired to be the head coach at Creighton. He was the head coach at Creighton until 2003, at which time he was hired at the University of Iowa. He was the head coach at the University of Iowa from the spring of 2004 until 2013. And then in June 2014, he was hired to be the head coach at Mount Mercy University, where he has been since in Iowa. He's also worked 3 years as an analyst on the Big Ten Network. Just a guy with a really cool background, done a lot of things, been a lot of places, had a ton of success. Really excited about this one. Coach Dahm, I want to thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. It's a great opportunity to be with you. And, of course, I met you back in the day when I was at Iowa, and you came and worked some of our camps. And it's a great honor. And love what you're doing with your podcast and helping people out, helping coaches out, and everything else. So it's an honor to be on with you today.
I appreciate that very much. It means a lot to be able to help people, which I know you and I talked before we started recording. As you move along with your career, the older you get, the more it becomes about helping other people, and that's a big thing about what we want to do. So for that purpose, I appreciate you being here and your willingness to kind of share some things that you've been through.
I greatly appreciate it, and everybody always talks about trusting the process, and winning's not the most important thing, and we can say that all we want, but as coaches, we want to win really bad. But it's come to light for me here at this level. I'm here to help these kids, teach them right from wrong, and trust the process, and the winning will take care of itself once you get the right kids and you're doing it the right way. So it's fun to help people.
So with your players there at Mount Mercy, if that is your goal, and it's more, it's bigger than winning. It's about helping these young men to become better people, to be prepared when they leave college, when they graduate, to go on with their lives and get a career and be good fathers, good husbands. How do you go about doing that? Like what is the actual process? Because that's talked about a lot now. I think a lot of people talk about it's baseball's bigger than baseball. College baseball's bigger than just winning. It's about helping these young men to be better young men. What does that mean as a coaching as the head coach and as a coaching staff? Day to day, week to week, year to year. What are some ways that you kind of track how you're doing there, track your progress, or things that you intentionally do as a coaching staff to help your players to mature and become better people while they're there?
You know what? I think that's a great question, and really one of the things you hear a lot of people talk about core values, what the program's going to stand for. And I don't care if it's a baseball program or a company. Everybody's got to have their core values, and I'm a big believer in that. And I've kind of changed it a little bit where I don't necessarily have my pillars of success, selflessness, loyalty, I had a very interesting situation. A good friend of mine, son was 14 years old and got cancer. He was a great athlete, good friend of my kids, and he was a tremendous athlete. And his dad always coached the teams he was part of. And back then, I don't know if you remember this, when Oregon had the phrase "win the day," and the young boy's name was Flash. He could really run, so his nickname was Flash. Flash believed in win the day, and so his dad every day would write that on a clipboard and hang it in the dugout or on the football field or basketball court, and and they talked about this, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but win the day went from something for athletics, to a way of life when the young fella, when Flash got cancer. And so he talks about that. He comes and talks to our team every year, and basically he simplified it, and it was about win the day. Number one, attitude. Number two,
I'm laughing over here. Yep.
Attitude, effort, shake and bake, in parentheses, fun. And that's what we talk about every day in our program. What does that look like? What does it look like on the baseball field? What does it look like academically? What does it look like in public? And decisions off the field. So we just talk about win the day and shake and bake. And it goes from attitude's number one below win the day, because your attitude is going to control your effort along with having fun. So I actually have that all over my offices. We've got a great player lounge here. We've got it in our dugout. And, it's really about winning the day. If you think about it, it's pretty simple. Make good decisions, do everything the best you can, and if you win the day, you've had a successful day.
For young kids, you got teenagers coming into your program. Winning the day, making good decisions throughout the day. I'm sure there are a lot of times when they feel like they're not living up. They're not, they're not doing what they're supposed to do all the time. And maybe some players feel like they're letting you down or letting the team down or whatever, because they're being teenagers. They're going to make bad decisions from time to time, whether it's staying up too late or going out on a night they shouldn't have gone out or whatever it may be. And now because of COVID, I'm sure teams are going to experience this spring. We're about to get into the spring of 2021 season. I'm sure there are going to be times when a bunch of guys on any particular team around the country are going to have to quarantine because one guy made a bad decision. And, how you deal with that stuff is a big part of it too. So, Coach, when you are, you're dealing with your players and you're sort of setting these expectations, how do you deal with guys who don't live up to expectations? Are there conversations to try to get them back on track? Do you have points where like it's too much with this one player, we're gonna have to cut him loose? Just kind of curious how you handle it when players I guess are having a hard time with the expectations that you're setting.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. That's one of the fun things about being at the NAIA school right now. Is I feel like I can give kids more opportunities than when I was at the University of Iowa or Creighton University. Because there's a lot of kids that they come here and they've been at 2 or 3 different schools because they always think the grass is greener on the other side or they made bad decisions. And the neat thing is I've had a lot of kids that were at like 3 schools before they came here and they end up staying here and graduating. And I think that's my number one goal is I want these kids to graduate. So, I've had some kids that I've got gray hair now that probably caused some gray hair, but I'll tell you what, I think it's the neatest thing when those kids, when they finally figure it out and you give them a lot of opportunities and ultimately they graduate and they go out and have a lot of success. So, one other thing that we do talk about, and I had this at the University of Iowa and I stole it from Skip Bertman. When I was at the University of Iowa, I gave every player a crystal baseball. And that was kind of our team rules. And what we told them, that was the ball of trust. What we told them is every decision that you make is in this crystal baseball. And if it's, drinking and driving or going out when you should study for a test or the way you treat a young lady or the way you treat your parents or a coach, you can't drop the ball. If you drop a crystal baseball, that ball might break. It doesn't every time. That doesn't mean it was the right decision that you made. But I always told the guys, even though it was a negative comment, I always say, hey, we can't drop the ball. When I was a young head coach at 25 years of age, I thought I had to have every rule written down, and all of a sudden my list of rules kept getting bigger and bigger. Well, I'm about trust now. I'm about loyalty and making good decisions. And when you make a bad decision, we're going to talk about it as a team, and hopefully they're not going to make that bad decision again. And, so it's been fun. You just try to teach kids. I've got some kids from the inner city that they come in here and they've had to fight for everything that they've gotten. So they don't realize it, but they end up becoming selfish on the baseball field. And I'm all about team. I'm all about selflessness, and it's all about helping the team win. But you got to understand, some of these kids came from a different, when they came up, they had to fight for everything that they had. And they didn't realize they were being selfish. So, the fun thing is finally when your teammates step up, the teammates end up stepping up and really helping a player out and saying, hey, you are being selfish. You're being negative to the team, where all of a sudden the team really grows and bonds because they're very honest. They become a good teammate instead of a good friend. A good teammate's going to call somebody out for being selfish. And I can do everything I can as a coach, but when you get your players and the culture that they help that young fella, that's really fun to watch.
The teammate compared to a good friend dynamic is something that I really enjoy talking about, and I think that there are a lot of coaches and players who don't always necessarily understand what that means, and the way you just explained is a really simple way to explain it. I coached high school baseball for one season after I left college ball, and in Pennsylvania here I tried it out for a year, and that was one of the things I tried to tell my players, because in high school especially, like, you've known these kids, you know the guys on your team since you were a kid. A lot of times, like, not everybody in the team, but a lot of them you've grown up, you played little league with them, and you've played JV baseball, and now you're on the varsity team together, and you, especially the pressures that high school players feel just being that age and being in high school, it's very difficult to cross that line where you're being a good teammate rather than a good friend, and doing things that a friend maybe wouldn't do or say, but as a teammate you've got to do it, you've got to say it. And that's such an important part of growing. When do you see that happen at the college level? Is that something that is coached? Is that something that you think happens as players mature? Or is that something that you think only happens with certain teams? Like, the team's got to have the right makeup where guys are willing to kind of be that good teammate, and other teams where maybe they're not. How much do the coaches influence that happening, and at what point do you see that happening, Coach, in college?
You know, that's a great question, and I think each year is a little bit different, to be honest with you. You know, internal leadership is a great thing when you got kids that buy into what the coaches are talking about. That's the trust, that's the loyalty, which are two key words in having a successful organization. So I think certain times it's harder, and you talked about how you were in a junior college program, and I think sometimes when the roster turns over so much, sometimes it's harder to do. I think as I've gotten older, and you know, when I got to Mount Mercy, it was actually a little bit easier than I thought, because where I was previously, there was a automatic respect because I was a D1 coach, and we were able to turn the attitude and the culture around pretty quick. But you still have people that fight it, and you know, that's when those players are such a big key. You know, one of the things I also talk about a little bit, Jeff, is a board of directors, and this is what guys have to understand. I've got guys in this program who don't drink. I've got guys that drink. I've got guys that have had trouble off the field, and it's easy to point and be critical of other people, saying, well, he went out last night, he was drinking, and he wasn't, or he was in the library, he's a better kid because he's studying, he's a 4.0. Well, to me, I'm a big believer in everybody's got special qualities. And I don't care if it's a guy that doesn't do well academically, but he has a special quality that I can learn from. And that's why don't be critical of others just because they have a different agenda. Hopefully we all want the same thing when we get on the baseball field, and that's to win a championship and do things the right way. And so it's something that can kind of grow, and I want people to know that somebody's not bad because they drink. They might have came from a background where their parents, that's all they were around. And what we want to teach kids is how to be, you know, respectful, how to trust each other. And he's not bad because maybe he does this or vice versa. So you just try to build that culture of respect. And I'm a big believer you got to earn respect. You know, I've seen programs where all of a sudden the seniors, they try to make these kids have to do stuff as freshmen because they're older and they think they should be respected. I tell our seniors, show respect to the younger guys and they'll respect you back. And so I think that's where it starts, not hazing kids and not making them do certain things just because they're younger. I think if you show them respect, they will respect you back. And I think that's something that definitely helps. But each year is a little bit different. I wish I could say that the team chemistry is great every year, but you know, every year you have some conflicts, and then that's why you don't win close ball games sometimes, just because they're not fighting together. But every year is different, in my opinion.
Do you believe that players need to? So you've talked about respecting each other and how important it is for the upperclassmen to show respect to the underclassmen, and then they'll get it back. How important is it, in your opinion, for a team to be successful on the field? How important is it that they like each other off the field? Is that important? Because I think that's another thing with culture being such a buzzword, a buzz term that gets thrown around so much now. And it's funny to me. I'm not that old. I'm 36, but it's almost like you have these different trends in baseball where like everyone thinks this is important, then everyone thinks this is important. And right now it's all about culture. Everybody's about culture and family atmosphere and all this. And I think that there's a lot to that, but I also think that there are some misnomers. But in your, that's why I like talking to coaches like you who've got a ton more experience than me and a lot more experience than most people. In your experience, how important is it that a team likes each other off the field if they're going to have success on the field, or do you think those two things are totally unrelated? Can a team respect each other? Can teammates respect each other on the field and play together well, and then go off the field and just not really care to spend much time with each other? Are those things related at all, or are they totally unrelated?
Well, I think if you get along off the field, I think it helps on the field. But I still believe it's more about that respect factor. Especially now, I've got a JV program. We've got about 70 kids in the program. So everybody, and during COVID, you can't quite build that team chemistry because we're all pods and we can't get COVID. And so that's a whole different subject talking about COVID. But I think you can still win if you have the respect. They might not get along off the field, but if they respect, they're all trying to fight and do the same thing together, that ultimate goal. I think you can do it, but it's much easier if they get along off the field. I think you look back at the Billy Martin days and the Bronx Bombers and the internal stuff that happened there, but yet the Yankees they wanted to win, and I think if you get those real competitive guys, another term and I use with my assistants sometimes is you can't have all milk drinkers. Sometimes you got to have whiskey drinkers in there with those milk drinkers. So sometimes it causes a little bit of stuff off the field, but you need to have those guys that are going to get dirty and be gritty on the field and teach those guys that, hey, we got to get a little tougher at times. Don't accept losing and call each other out. And sometimes it creates not the best friendships, but ultimately, if there's a respect, I think you can still win. I think it's easier if your teams get along, but it's not absolutely mandatory to do it that way.
I love that. Now, how much team building do you guys do? Do you spend a lot of time as a team with team building functions? Whether it's like I've seen teams that have sort of have done like physical type challenges. That was a thing. When I first started coaching, you'd go to the convention and some of the mental strength guys were talking about like actual physical activities to kind of bring teams together, things like that. And other teams that will have guys go kind of have meetings in the off season where, players are encouraged to tell some personal things about themselves to their teammates. Some coaches believe in that stuff, some don't. And I don't know if this has changed throughout the years for you, but where do you stand right now? Do your teams do a lot of team building and family atmosphere type of activities, or is that something that you just think that is either naturally going to happen or it's not, because these guys are still around each other all the time between classes, where they live, what they're doing off the field, and obviously all the time they're spending on the field together. What's your take? How much do you guys do at Mount Mercy in the team building atmosphere realm, and has that changed for you over the years?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. I think throughout the years, I was fortunate enough to get to know Brian Kane real well. Brian came, and he's one of the top peak performance guys in the country, and Brian came, and we got really into it quite a bit when I was at Iowa. I think there's the kids I have at Mount Mercy are a little bit different than the ones I had at Iowa and Creighton, because every one of those players at the D1 level thinks they're going to go out and play professional baseball, and they think they should be playing and this and that. So I did quite a bit of team building, and we did the Omaha Challenge. That was something that we did at Iowa, which was fun. created competitiveness. And then we would sit there and talk sometimes. And I think one of the biggest things that, especially with kids that want to be professional baseball players, is sometimes it becomes a job, and I just talked about flash, and win the day. And what I want our guys to realize, we get to play baseball. We get to go to practice. We don't have to. And so I'm a big believer in that, and I talk about that, and I do some team building here. Now, this year I wasn't able to do it because of COVID, So, and my team building really starts with the Flash's parents coming here to speak and talking about winning the day and what that looks like, and try to put some things in perspective. That's the biggest thing I think that coaches want, especially older coaches, is they want their kids to realize you get the opportunity, and you're fortunate to be representing Mount Mercy University, the University of Iowa, the high school team, or Creighton University. And so I don't do as much team building stuff, but I really talk about that on a regular basis. And I think it's very good, and I think each team's a little bit different. Last year, I have a veteran team this year. I have guys that took a semester off to come back to help us. We've got a chance to have a special team this year. And so I've got a bunch of veterans. I'm trying to stay out of their way. Now, I got a lot of young guys, too, that we're trying to spend a little bit of time with. But I got to stay out of the way of my older guys here. That's what we're talking about as coaches right now. So we're not doing as much team building. We just got to keep them focused every day in practice. That's the biggest thing, and keep them out of trouble off the field since they're older. Team building is very important, but I think each team is a little bit different. And with COVID this year, we haven't been able to do it. I actually just got done putting together a big player lounge and actually a meeting area that we're going to call the Idaho room, like everybody. D1 schools call it the Omaha room, but we've got the Idaho room where we've got a big whiteboard and we can have classroom sessions, and we haven't been able to use it, though, because of COVID. But at some point next year, when I have a very young team, we will do a little more of that team building stuff. But right now, I got to stay out of my team. They're hungry. They've given up a lot to come back and try to win. So this year, I got to stay out of their way. Next year, I'll have to do a lot of that team building.
I like that you are able to have a feel for the team, and I'm sure that's something that comes with experience, comes with years of coaching, but that you're basically doing what you're doing based on feel and what your team needs, and the older, an older team doesn't need it as much, but a team with a bunch of younger guys, they definitely do. Let's talk about NAIA baseball a little bit for people that maybe aren't that familiar. You spent a long time at Division I as a player, as a coach, as an assistant, as a head coach, and now you're at the NAIA level. Let's if we were to make a pros and cons list, of NAIA, we can stay away from the cons, but let's go in the pro side. What are some pros of NAIA? Some things that you like, some things that maybe favor players more at that level than other levels, than maybe the Division I or even Division II, Division III. What good things are there that the NAIA has got right? What are they doing right there that you think people should be aware of to know more about the level?
Well, you know what? First of all, there are some really, really, really good baseball teams here. At the NAIA level, and a lot of D1 guys that maybe it didn't work out at their school, so they bounced back and they're eligible to play right away at the NAIA level. Now, some of the rule changes where people are going to be able to transfer again within Division I might hurt us a little bit, but there's really good baseball. Some good coaches, and it's been fun. It's baseball. My first games as a head coach here, we went down to Southeastern in Florida, and they won national championships here the last couple of years, and we weren't very good at all, and we almost won our first game there. Unfortunately, I had a catcher in left field, and in the last out, he dropped it. We ended up losing in extra innings, but that was a big eye-opener for me, because I told my guys that next day, I'd been out of baseball for a year, and I said, fellas, it doesn't matter if you're playing Arizona State, Wichita State, Notre Dame, Florida State, or if it's Southeastern or the teams in our league. Baseball is baseball, and my competitive juices got going, and that was an eye-opener for me. It's still about going out and being able to compete, and that's the opportunity that the NAIA gives you. As I said, there's some really good baseball coaches. There's a lot of young coaches coaches who are trying to make a name for themselves. It reminds me of, when I was at Creighton. Now, I was fortunate. I got a very, very good job. My first job, maybe not deserving, but I got it. I tried to make the most of it. And there's some coaches here that are ultra uber competitive. So sometimes I laugh a little bit because I think they get in their own way instead of helping their team. But it's been fun baseball. Talent level's good. We've built this thing here at Mount Mercy. We've got better facilities here at Mount Mercy. We got brand new all-turf facility. We got an indoor facility. We've got the players' lounge, study hall area. It's amazing what I have here. And I've got, as I said, better facilities here than when I was at Creighton or University of Iowa. And I have an administrator that is absolutely tremendous and lets us do our thing. So NAIA baseball is very good. Now, I will tell you, I mentioned this before we got going, I feel like I'm going back in time where all of a sudden it was so hard as a northern program at the NCAA level to make the regionals. And if you had a bad week at the Division I level as a northern program, you weren't going to get that large berth. And I feel like I've stepped back in time. You look at NCAA baseball, and the biggest change now has been the RPI, where northern schools, when you go down south, you get more points for wins on the road than you do if you're at home. Also, I'm back in time here where it's pretty hard as a northern school to get that large berth because we got to go down south and play all these southern schools, and if you beat them, you go 1-2. It doesn't help you that much compared to like at the Division I level. So there's some things as I'm getting to know the NAIA level, I think there's some things that maybe I can help northern schools with if people listen, although the South has the advantage, where they actually have preseason rankings are very important. Heck, I don't even know who's on my team when they ask me what my starting lineup is going to be and where we should be ranked. Preseason rankings shouldn't matter at all, but it does at the NAIA level. So there's some interesting things here, and the support from certain schools, the different rules, how you count scholarships, this and that. It's a little bit different here. So maybe more obstacles to try to make that big jump at the NAIA level than it was even at the NCAA level.
As far as scholarships go, you said that it's guys can transfer directly from NCAA Division I teams and be eligible to play for you. But what about are roster limits, scholarships? Are those similar to other NCAA levels, or are those different as well?
It is different. We get 12. Basically, you can have 12 full rides here at the NAIA level, but there's a couple interesting rules in there. Basically, it's any money that the university gives to you. So some people are all athletic money that kids get. We have a combination of baseball money, which I get so much money per person that comes in, and then also academic money. So whatever they get between the academic money and the baseball money will count against that 12 scholarships. Now, that's only if you play on the varsity team. So everybody here has some sort of money academically and baseball-wise, but I can only have, ultimately, playing in the spring, only up to 12 scholarships, which is interesting because if you're a high GPA, if you're over, I want to say, a 3.8 or 3.9, now they don't count their scholarship against your 12. They also have, if you're over a 3.4 or 3.5, I think it is, only half of your scholarship counts. So you get rewarded also if you get some really smart kids, which, I had 9 kids with 4.0s first semester, and I'm really proud of that. So now I can have my roster be a little bit bigger, especially with COVID, because of that. So there are a lot I'm still learning the rules here, to be honest with you. Everyone says there's not, NAIA doesn't have any rules. Oh, we got plenty of rules, but I'm still trying to learn them.
Coach, I want to go back to the beginning of your career. You played at Creighton. You coached at Creighton. In only your second spring, if I'm not mistaken, your second spring coaching at Creighton, the team makes it to the College World Series. Can you take us back to that time and just tell us exactly what that was like? What that was like for a mid-major Division I team to not only make it to the College World Series, but to finish third, and the fact that Creighton's located in Omaha. The College World Series is in Omaha. You know, your hometown team playing for it all. Can you just kind of take us back to that time and tell us what that was like, especially as a guy 2 years removed from playing?
Well, I'll tell you what, I just got goosebumps when you talked about, when I started thinking about that time. It was a very special time, and I'll tell you what, it's amazing how close that team still is. All the people that play for Jim Hendry. Now, for people that don't know, Jim Hendry was the head coach at Creighton, and then ultimately was the general manager of the Chicago Cubs, and he left after we went to the World Series. Dave Dombrowski hired him with the Florida Marlins, and ultimately, like I said, was the GM of the Cubs, and now a special assistant to the GM for the Yankees. But Jim Hendry sat in my living room, and I remember him telling me that we're going to play in the College World Series at some point. And he said, you might not be on the team at that point, but you're going to be the foundation of us making it to Omaha. And I remember him sitting there telling me that. And then as I played, my recruiting class, we had a great class. We were ranked about 5th in the country, I think. We had Scott Service, who was my roommate in college, who was now the manager of the Seattle Mariners. We had some special players in that group, but it was a process that we went through. And so I saw us, my junior year, we had a team that we thought qualified for the regionals, and we were beating Wichita State in the conference championship game, and it rained, and they declared Wichita State the champion, and then we didn't get that large berth to the NCAA, which we had just beaten Missouri. We had a better record than them, and they took Missouri instead of us. That was a little eye-opening to us, and it really hurt, but it probably it might have been the best thing to jumpstart our program. And then ultimately in 1990, we came up a little short at Texas. We were in the regional, but that motivated us. We got a couple breaks, a couple kids came back, and in 1991, our SID put on the press guide that said to play in June. And that's when the World Series was the first week of June, and ultimately it came true. That changed college baseball, Jeff. People don't realize people were lined up the night before for the World Series just to get to the games, and we had a couple of classics with Wichita State, who happened to be a Missouri Valley Conference team also. And they went from nobody could get a ticket for the World Series, and Omaha was a buzz. And ultimately, I believe it changed college baseball, because all of a sudden Omaha sold out season tickets, which allowed them to expand Rosenblatt Stadium. And it's awesome. Every 5 years we go back and we're at the World Series, and they introduce us, and it's a special time. I'm in the Creighton Hall of Fame because of that 1991 College World Series, and it changed college baseball. And Jim Hendry's still best friends. He sends me dirty jokes all the time, and we play golf, and it's just a lot of fun and a special group of guys. And it definitely changed college baseball. There might not be a Ameritrade Stadium right now if it wasn't for Creighton and the buzz that year in '91 and expansion of Rosenblatt and everybody buying those season tickets.
That is so cool. And for anybody who has not been to the College World Series, it's an experience that you can't match. I got lucky. So when I was coaching with Justin Schulte out there in Iowa, one of the other assistant coaches knew guys that worked for Baseball Factory, which is a company that puts on showcases and things of that nature. And they run, well, at least at the time, they ran a camp every year at Iowa Western, which is right across the Iowa border from Omaha. And part of the thing with the camp is that players and coaches got to go to College World Series games. I had never been to a College World Series game, but because this other coach, I would go and work these Baseball Factory tournaments, or the Baseball Factory camps, and got to go to my first College World Series games. Unbelievable experience. The only games I've ever been to that are close to that type of atmosphere was I got to go to when the Pittsburgh Pirates got the couple years in their franchise history when they went to recently when they went to the playoffs. I got to go see one of their playoff games against the Cubs, a wild card game. That was the only thing I ever been to that's comparable to this. It was an unbelievable atmosphere. It's something that if you haven't done it, you really need to go just experience what Omaha is really like, especially like in the early. I'm sure that I never was there for the the championship, but there in the early rounds, like you have people from all these teams, fans of all these teams around, and just an incredible amount of people around. I remember standing outside, like in these lines that are hundreds of people deep, trying to get in the stadium. It was really, really cool.
You know, I still go back every year, Jeff, with some of our supporters of Mount Mercy, and I've got so many good friends back there. Of course, Ed Service, the head coach there, was my assistant. He's done a fantastic job there. But I got a great World Series story. I'll try to make it quick, but you know, I was on the College World Series board of directors as a young head coach, and I got an opportunity to meet all the head coaches that came in. I set up their practices, and they'd call me for where should we go eat, this, that. So Augie Garrido was still at Cal State Fullerton at the time. It's actually, I don't know if you remember the name, Mark Kotze was a player of the year.
Oh, yeah.
A great baseball player. His team, and they were picked to win it. They were #1 seed coming in, and they barely won their first game. They really struggled. It was a fight. And I got done, and I'm on the field, and Augie comes up to me, and he goes, "Man, that wasn't good." And this is where some of my beliefs, even talking about win the day, comes from. But Augie looked at me. He goes, "Hey, where could I take my team to go watch a youth baseball game?" And as you know, Omaha's crazy where there's all the tournaments, there's the showcases going on. So I said, "Hey, here's a park. There's a game here at this time." So the day after, so he on the way to the ballpark. That's when TVs were first put into buses. There was more TV that was strapped in, but he put the game the day before of them playing in the first round game, and then they pulled up to the park and he turned it off and he goes, "Okay, we're gonna go out here for 15 minutes." Now, can you imagine these young 10, 11-year-old kids with all of a sudden here comes Cal State Fullerton, and they go out and for 15 minutes they watched the youth game. They went back into the bus, and Augie said, "Why are we here? What did you see?" And one of the players said, "They're having fun." And Augie said, "Exactly. You guys played, if you watch this tape, you guys played uptight. You didn't play to win. You weren't having fun, and that's why we play the game." They didn't have a close game the rest of the World Series, and it was about watching kids that you get to play the game, enjoy it, have fun. And that's in the biggest stage. That's the greatest baseball coach of all time. For him to take his team to go watch a bunch of 10 and 11-year-olds play, that was pretty moving to me, and it put things in perspective to me.
That is such a cool Augie. There are a million cool Augie Garrido stories, but that might be the most unique one and probably the most PG one I've ever heard. But very, very cool stuff.
There's some good ones. He would be mad, though. Boy, he'd come up to my office to practice today. And I know more about some of the Augie Garrido stuff than others just because, he'd want to let out some stress. And, boy, he liked his red wine, too. But Augie was great. And that, you know what, you really can't coach that way anymore. You know, it's interesting. You can watch those videos, and you really got to be careful. I don't care if it's college football, basketball, or baseball. The way you communicate's got to be a little differently nowadays than it used to be. As Augie would have been if he was still here, would have been the first one to tell you that.
Augie was just a great one. If you're if you're a young player listening to this, or even a young coach, and you're not sure who Augie Garrido is, you should look him up and listen to some of the talks that he's had with his teams over the years that you can still find on YouTube. Just a really amazing coach that I wish I had a chance to meet at some point, and I'm jealous that you did. And we could probably do a whole different podcast just on your experiences with Augie, which I'm sure would be really beneficial for a lot of people. I'm sure that had a great impact on you, Coach Dahm, as a young coach. Through the years, as you've grown, gotten older, you've been around people like Augie Garrido to sort of shape you and whatnot. If you could go back and talk to yourself as when you were an assistant coach at Creighton, or even as when you first got to be the head coach at Creighton, with what you know today, what would be some things that you would say to yourself, or maybe guide yourself in a different direction than you were going at the time, or just anything you might want to say to yourself as a young guy with all the experience you have now under your belt?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was very fortunate at a young age to get that job. And number one thing I had to do is, I had to make sure that I realized I deserved it, because all the things I did as a player and as an assistant coach for Jim Hendry, and also Todd Wimberg, who was there for a couple of years. I think sometimes people people were like, oh, he didn't deserve it. Well, I did what I was supposed to do in order to get it. But at the same time, I will tell you this, I don't think I was quite ready for that position as far as managing actually some of the kids who I played with. So I just wish I would have been a little more organized, a little in my practice plans, understand the team building. Jim Hendry had a gift. There's certain guys that can get people to respond to him, and I'm not Jim Hendry. I tried to be Jim Hendry. I'm not. I had to be myself, and that's the biggest thing. I wish I would have been myself. Here's the other one. I talked about the board of directors earlier. I was a tremendous assistant coach. Jim Hendry would go, go talk to this guy. He's not going to play. Explain it, or he's struggling. See what's going on. So I had a great skill that I got from my mom. My mom passed away, unfortunately, but she's on my board of directors because she had a listening skill that was absolutely incredible. I might be out partying when I was back in college. I'd come home at 3 in the morning. My mom would be on the phone because she was part of a group for people that had drug and alcohol abuse or were getting abused where they could call. So I'd walk in at 2, 3 in the morning. I'd look at my mom, who are you talking to? She'd say, I don't know. And she had the most incredible listening skill. When I became a head coach at Creighton, I felt like I had to have the answers for my players. And I think that's the biggest thing for coaches. All of a sudden, become a head coach, you think you got to have the answers. Still to this day, as a parent, as an assistant coach or a head coach, the most important skill you can have is listen. A lot of times, if kids just come in and talk, they'll figure it out themselves. You don't have to have the answer. Be supportive of them, but give them the time, give them your ear. And that's one of the most important skills. And I lost that when I became a head coach early on in my career. And so that would be my biggest thing I would tell myself.
I love that, and I think that can probably be applied to most people in most life situations. I don't think you need to be a head baseball coach to hear that and for it to have an impact on you. So great stuff. One last question I have for you, Coach, just to kind of wrap things up. What's next for Jack Dahm? You've done a lot of things. I know that you just recently accepted a summer job. I think it was for the first time ever, but you've been at the NAIA level now for several years. What does the future look like for you as your kids are getting older and maybe things change in your life? What's next for you?
You know what you got to go back and you got to reevaluate. When I got let go at the University of Iowa, I was a tremendous fundraiser at Creighton and Iowa, and I did some things in those programs. I'm very proud of where I left those programs. But when all of a sudden you're not coaching baseball and you go to try to find a job, really, they just say you're a baseball coach. They don't say you're a fundraiser. They don't say that, you're managing people and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of opened up my eyes a little bit. So one of the things I'm doing right now, first of all, I love it at this level. I've been offered some athletic director's jobs and this and that. I'm not too sure I want to go down that road. I love coaching here. My son's a freshman. I'll get a chance to coach him for the next 3 years. And I can see myself coaching here 5, 10 years. Coaching this summer is something I always wanted to do, and the Prospect League is tremendous. And so I'm looking forward. You talk about helping people. Well, I feel bad for Clinton because they lost their minor league team. So I want to make sure that transition goes very smoothly for them to the Prospect League. And I'm looking forward to coaching there this summer. It's 60 games in 70 days. I'm looking forward to it. And, maybe at some point when I'm done coaching, maybe I can run a summer organization, or my other job here is fundraising for the athletic department. So I'd like to be in a foundation. But I learned I better have a plan B for when I get out of coaching. But bottom line is I want to help kids in baseball for hopefully the next 10 years as far as coaching goes. And I'm fortunate that my wife has been very supportive. We've been through some ups, some downs. She's stuck with me and love her to death, and my kids are great kids. So I'm going to coach for as long as I can. Summer league's going to be fun. Who knows? Maybe we can do something else in the summer as far as another program at some point if I get the opportunity.
This has been really, really enjoyable. This is Jack Dahm, everybody, who's the head coach currently at Mount Mercy University and NAIA in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. This has just personally been very enjoyable. I think even podcasts that are really informative aren't always something that I personally enjoy, but I've enjoyed listening to you. I always enjoy listening to coaches who have a lot of experience and been through a lot, and if you can see the evolution of the coach throughout the podcast, and I think we've gotten a lot of that. There are some things we didn't touch on that we definitely could have that maybe that means we need to schedule a second round of this. But Coach Dahm, I just want to personally thank you. A guy with your amount of experience and your insight, and someone who's just been through so much and has so much to offer. We're very, very blessed to have you on a podcast like this.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate it, and I love what you're doing. I love what I'm doing, and I'm fortunate to be back in it and been able to do some things. And I think sometimes we got to remember one thing as coaches: we do not have jobs if it's not for our student athletes. And so I want to try to just keep giving back to them, and then helping young coaches too. I've got some young coaches that I can't wait for them to move on. And my first assistant coach was Brian O'Connor, who's turned out pretty good for himself at Virginia, and I've got a lot of coaches out there, and that's the fun part: helping people, helping young kids, and that's what you're doing with this, and I appreciate it. I love to be on anytime you want.